To get things started, let me talk about our first presenters. Our first presenters today, let me operate this, are Steve Wandler and Richard Mandeberg. So Steve Wandler is the founder of yourtechonline.com, based in Kelowna, and it became the #1 ranked online tech support company in North America, and it beat out Best Buy's Geek Squad. And I think because of that, but we'll find out, was acquired by support.com in 2008. And Steve has done a stint in Silicon Valley. He's back in Canada now, I think most of the time, playing golf, but actually, while he's here, he's been very active in the tech community, and he's working on several startup advisory boards, and he's been instrumental in setting up some relationships between some Canadian high-tech companies and some potential acquirers or potential partners down in the US. And because he is a serial entrepreneur, wants to be one, he's just co-founded a new startup called Character.com with 2 Bay Area partners, which is launching a social network and security tool product or scene or something. Anyhow, you go on this side, it says, welcome to stealth mode, so he might have to tell you about that after this session. Richard Mandeberg is a former executive vice president of business development and strategic partners at support.com, the folks who acquired Steve's company. And Richard has a long career where he's focused on web-enabled consumer product strategies related to customer acquisition. He's worked with both early-stage startups and, I think, public companies. And he's basically has experience in bringing products and online services to the markets, building brands, and developing strategic partnerships to accelerate revenue. Richard also is a newly minted CEO of Common Deeds, a company formed in July 2010, which is creating a social platform to build ad hoc groups committed to social action. Looks very interesting. His site is not stealth, so you can go on it and check that out. And today they will talk about, I think in their words, the dance that occurred that led to the acquisition of yourtechonline.com by support.com. So they're going to both come out here and they're going to chit-chat back and forth. Let's grab that one.
I think Richard's we actually thought we were going to be second, but that's okay. Yeah, we'll figure it out. And we're kind of I don't follow notes really well because I have ADD. So I actually think I do. I've never been diagnosed, but I'm pretty sure that I do. So Richard, you're going to start out, and then we're just going to kind of banter back and forth a little bit about our relationship, how we met, how we positioned ourselves for acquisition, and then how, like we talked about the dance a little bit about support.com and Your Tech Online and how that all works. So good. Why don't you go ahead?
This mic is live? Yes, sounds like it is. So both companies, support.com was previously known as SupportSoft, and Your Tech Online were both in the online consumer computer repair space. And as was mentioned, we both competed in some ways with Geek Squad, where you would walk your computer into a store and get it fixed. With the proliferation of high-speed internet, we could, over the internet, take control of a computer and attempt to fix it, set up routers, adjust printers, that kind of thing. SupportSoft was a public company in California. We're located near south of San Francisco, near the airport. It was originally an enterprise software company that built enterprise software for remote desktop control that was used by telecoms, Bell Canada, Comcast, Cox, and also overseas in Europe. A new CEO had come in about 2004, and I came in with him with the decline of the enterprise software business, and we decided to take the company off in a consumer direction. Company had revenues, it was a small company, had revenues of about 40 to 60 million, depending what year you look at. Had about a few hundred employees, had an engineer.
Loads of cash.
Had about $120 million in cash. Our position when we came in to take it in the consumer direction was declining enterprise business, good core customers, but $120 million in cash. And we began to build a consumer business.
All right. So a little history about Your Tech Online first. We started in 2000. with the premise of we wanted to build kind of a Navy SEAL line of tech support agents, and we knew the only way that we could do that is through remote distribution. So we hired everybody remotely, work from home, and so it was a remote call center that we built. One of the first actually in Canada, and what we know of in North America when we first started to build it, and we got the attention of Dell and Hewlett-Packard and Staples. And but one of the issues that we had, so we were very, very good at what we did, and won several awards for doing it, which put us on the map. But one of the challenges that we had building the company, especially in Canada, was how to scale the business, because most of our customers were actually in the U.S. We didn't try to go after the Canadian market, although some of it did happen. But we really had a problem scaling and positioning ourselves in the U.S. market. And we kind of got lucky when we won the PC Magazine Editor's Choice Award, which kind of propelled us to a whole different level. When we beat out Best Buy's Geek Squad and
Support.com.
Oh, we beat you guys too? So we beat everybody. We only had 30 employees. And so Best Buy had 600, I think it was. And so we actually got lucky, because when they called in, we weren't that busy, and we were able to fix the guy's problem in 12 minutes. And Best Buy, I think they took 40 minutes or something, and I don't know where you guys landed, but it was low. And sorry, it was low though. It was low. So we did get lucky, but the very next day, slammed our phone system, basically took our systems down, and a couple days, I think a week later, I got a call from Michael Dell, and we had people in our office wanting to acquire us. So that was in 2005. Our first acquisition, when somebody come to acquire us, we actually turned it down. Dumbest thing I've ever done, because it was probably 3 times the money that Support.com paid us, but that's hindsight, I guess. And so positioning ourselves from a marketing perspective, we really leveraged our story of work from home, and we leveraged all of our press that we were getting from PC Mag Editor's Choice. In between there, we actually had, so when we turned down Dell, we had another attempt to be acquired by a investment bank from New York, and we weren't able to put that deal together. They walked at the last minute. So we learned a lot from those 2 deals, which leads us to Support.com.
So we started to build in 2005 or 6, whatever it was, the consumer business. And we learned some important things. The things that we did right was we had lots of cash. We did not have a consumer culture. We had the legacy of this enterprise business, which in fact was very different. We had a large engineering team over in India. But we did, I will say, recruit a good core team of consumer technologists and consumer marketing folks. And one of the things we realized was that people, if you were going to fix their computers in North America, they wanted to talk to people who were in North America. So when we started our business, we actually hired an outsourced call center in upstate New York, and that was economically unfeasible. So we started to march along. The other thing we realized was, because we were a public company, we did not have the patience of the public markets to take the time. We had the cash, but we didn't have the time to build and iterate the business. We had to grow it fast. And so we had 2 options. One was to go out and acquire revenue, something that would be clearly accretive from a stock price point of view. The problem was that this was an industry that was, on the consumer side, very nascent. There were no other big players. There was no one to acquire revenue. But there were some companies that had core expertise, Your Tech Online being one of them, because they had figured out at least how to set up a work-from-home structure. They had figured out how to train and screen people, things we had not figured out yet, but we certainly had the core infrastructure of building out the technology. So when we started the process of deciding we were going to acquire someone, it was a little odd, because we were kind of like the big kid at the dance with the big wallet, and everybody knew it. So whenever we showed up, everybody was kind of like, gee, I hope you buy us. which it can be off-putting and make the conversations difficult. And we'd actually talked to 2 or 3 companies before we began talking to Your Tech Online, but as luck would have it, kind of separately from the board and the CEO, and certainly from the investors, Steve and I had met at different events, and so I'll let you take it.
Yeah, so, while we were preparing for this, we discussed what was one of the most important things for positioning the company for acquisition, and we both definitely agreed number one thing was relational. And because every time we met, so Richard and I first met in late 2005 at the San Jose Grand Prix, had a few drinks together. I didn't know who he was, he didn't know who I was. We were just kind of standing at a table, and at the end of the conversation, he's like, well, we're kind of looking for something to buy. And well, it sounded like that after a few drinks. And did a little bit of homework on support, and by the time we were through 2 different acquisition due diligence deals, and were unsuccessful, and I was 6 years into it, I was a little bit tired and knew that I wanted to kind of get out and do something different. And so Richard and I stayed in touch. I think a year later, we met in Las Vegas at CES and had a conversation at that point. They were talking to our other 2 competitors, so we didn't give a lot of information away. But I think we met your team, and the CEO and I got along really well. And I think that kept coming up in the conversations with the executive team is, we just really like you. You Canadians are really nice, and that really kind of helped us being Canadian, I guess, because we were really nice. But I always got sick of hearing that because I wanted to do business together. I didn't want to just be nice, and so we got to that point, and then I think when we started doing due diligence, more of how I knew I wanted to sell. But I knew they had the money to buy, and I knew there wasn't a lot of players in the market, especially after I also found out they walked from our other 2 bigger competitors, so we were kind of next in line. So I wanted to make sure that we weren't seeming overly anxious, but to get the most money, but wanted to make sure the deal got done as well.